So Kevin McCarthy went on CNBC. Now, usually CNBC is all like, patty cake bakers, man, with the biggest goblins in the country, people like Kevin McCarthy. But he's really going to cross a line here because he decides to criticize look at all this debt, bro. Look at this deficit. Look at this big government spending, bro. We can't afford this. What about our grandkids, bro? What about our grandkids, bro? This is a classic, it's Republicans, whenever they are out of power, they're like, oh, the debt, the deficit. Oh, you better fix this, Democrats. You better cut all the social safety net programs. You better kick grandma on the street or you're a little bitch. This is what they do. But then the second they're in power, like, debt? Deficit? I don't even know what you're talking about. Deficit, bro. Deficit, bro? Deficit, bro? I don't even know. What's a deficit, bro? Because then they're responsible for it, and they try to act like it's a non-issue when they're in charge, right? Well, Kevin McCarthy is really going to show his whole ass here. Talking to a CNBC host. Now, look, the CNBC host doesn't push back aggressively enough, but I will. I'll tell you exactly what the counter argument is. So here we go.
Giving your child a credit card, and they charge the limit all the way up. Would you just raise the limit? No, you would sit down.
Well, if it meant playing with America's standing at full faith and credit of U.S. government debt, but I feel like you can deal with the spending in other ways, which is totally...
Okay, so just to explain what's happening here, they're talking about the debt limit, and every time we cross the debt limit, Congress has to increase the debt limit. Now, why is that absolutely vital? Why is it crucial? Because the debt limit is an arbitrary line, and this is about money we've already spent. So if you don't raise the debt limit, then there's a contradiction in the laws because we've already done the budget for the year. We already know it's going to add X amount to the deficit and the debt. And to not lift it is just, as she points out, destroying the full faith and credit of the United States government and would lead to a recession, but probably more likely a depression. It would just destroy the economy virtually overnight. Now, every developed country runs a deficit. Every single one. Every single one. The real indicator of whether or not you're in a healthy situation or not is the debt to GDP ratio. That's more important. And also the trade deficit is a slightly different issue, and it makes more sense to be a hawk on that than it does to be a hawk on just the overall national debt and the annual deficit. So it's not a real criticism from him. Oh, we shouldn't raise the debt limit. You absolutely have to. It's not a question, right? It's not a debate. If you don't raise it, then you're just flat out asking for the destruction of the U.S. economy. Okay, let's continue.
Legitimate.
So if you just raise the debt ceiling, do you think $31 trillion of debt? The CBO has come out in the next 10 years. Do you know we'll pay 10.5?
You did it 3 times in the Trump administration.
As we did economic changes. We never...
So, in other words, she's like, you raised the debt limit 3 times when the Republicans were in control. You didn't make a big stink about this then. Again, why? Because they know they have to do it. It's not a question. This is just a political theater while the Democrats in charge. Oh, we shouldn't do it. Look at all this debt, bro. Now, by the way, what's the next argument they always use? That's why we have to cut Social Security and we have to cut Medicare. Weird. So the 2 most popular government programs, healthcare for old people and a payment for old people, that's the first thing on the chopping block to you? That's the first thing on the chopping block. What about the Pentagon? They literally can't account for 59% of their money. They failed 5 audits in a row. We spend trillions of dollars. We spend more than the next 10 biggest countries combined when it comes to military spending. Why is that not on the top of your list? Why is it not on the top of your list to say, hey, 0 Wall Street bailouts from here on out? Nothing more. Don't prop up big financial institutions. Don't give subsidies to ExxonMobil. That never makes it in. But oh my God, the best programs in the country that help old people, let's cut those first.
The debt ceiling by
itself. The tax cuts, that was like $2 trillion.
And you know how much we're bringing in revenue? On average, in the 50-year average in America, you bring 17% of GDP. Today, we're bringing 20. That's the only 2 other times in modern history in America have you ever brought 20%.
So this is a lie. I'll break it down in a second.
GDP. That's because the tax cuts actually created economy to grow and brought more revenue into the economy. But the only thing the president says is he wants to raise more taxes. They actually, inside his budget, proposes raises to spend more money than we spent at the height of the pandemic. That makes no sense.
So I was going to ask you about taxes because I wonder, because you want to extend the Trump tax cuts, correct?
Yes.
But isn't that a little hypocritical when you're talking about finding savings everywhere and being on an unsustainable fiscal path?
How's that hypocritical when it's bringing
tax cuts,
20%?
Tax savings?
Really? You're sitting on the market. You're sitting where the future goes, where people make an investment. So will this company actually able to go public if they have more regulation and higher taxes? Who gets more money?
I get the argument for it.
But you know what happens on this floor? People make an investment and it pays for their pension. People make an investment to pay for their kids' education. And you know why these companies come here? Because this is the place to grow. But right now we're finding with competition, with higher taxes, with higher burdensome regulation into the administration, that they're not always coming to this market. So yes, I will always advocate for the idea that we are streamlining our tax policies, that we're also streamlining our regulation. So America is the place you want to start that business.
Is that why you're here today?
I started
people are
my
wondering
first
why you're here.
business when I was 20 years old.
Okay. So, here's why she's right and he's dead wrong. He's talking about debt, deficit. And she's like, didn't you vote for the Trump tax cuts? The reason why that's a devastating counter-argument is because, first of all, 83% of the benefits went to the top 1%. Second of all, it added trillions of dollars to the deficit. So it's, the deficit, bro. The deficit, bro. You guys added to it massively, but you didn't care. Why? Because the benefits were going to the wealthy. That's the bottom line. And that it's such a bogus argument. Did you know that by cutting taxes, we actually increased government revenue? Did you know that? This is the Laffer curve argument. They've been saying this forever, and it never is true. It never bears out. Their point is, hey, if you cut taxes for the rich, what happens is you unleash the beast of the free market capitalist system. And you create so many jobs and create so much profit, and everybody's doing so well that you actually make it so that even though the rich are paying a lower tax rate, a lower percentage, they actually pay more as a real number because they've made so much more money and it's been so good for everybody in the economy. But that's not true. If that was the case, you wouldn't have the increase of trillions of dollars in the deficit. But you do. By the way, you did under Ronald Reagan as well. He was the first one to do, well, they probably did it also in the 19-teens, they probably did a similar economic philosophy. But Ronald Reagan was the first in the modern era to bring back trickle-down economics, or as even George H.W. Bush called it, voodoo economics. Why did he call it that? Because he's like, this doesn't make sense. You're not going to cut taxes for the rich and then increase government revenue. You're going to add to the debt and the deficit. And that's exactly what happened. George W. Bush, same thing. Cut taxes for the rich, do deregulation. Oh, this will fix everything. No, it led to a giant recession. And of course, he added a tremendous amount of money to the debt and the deficit. So it's just, look, it's just a disingenuous argument. I would have a lot more respect for these people if they picked one or the other, right? Like, which is it? Which is it? Do you prioritize tax cuts over your deficit and debt hawkery, or do you value the deficit and debt hawkery over the tax cuts? You can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, yeah, I'm a hawk on the deficit, but also let me add to the deficit with colossal tax cuts for elites. You cannot have it both ways. So it's junk economics. It's voodoo economics. It doesn't work. It never worked. The real purpose of it is, I just want to give all the money to my donors. Like, I don't even know if they actually believe in the things that they're espousing. I don't. It might just be, hey, we get paid by our donors, so we're going to use this bogus rationalization, but just give all the money to our donors. So, anyway, at least she called him a hypocrite to his face. It wasn't as aggressive a pushback as I would have liked to see, but she did get in the main points, and she's correct. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take zero ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.